Beyond, and hello and welcome to Podcast Beyond episode 777. It's a good lucky number. I'm your host, Max Scoville, and I'm joined by Josh Dew.
Hi.
Jada Griffin.
Hello.
And game director for God of War Ragnarok, Eric Williams from Sony Santa Monica. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. Now, full disclosure, we're going to spoil this game. So everyone should have played it. We've all played it. Eric, have you played it?
A couple times.
Okay, good. That's important. So yeah, you've been warned. If you haven't played God of War Ragnarok, like you don't want to know what happens, then go elsewhere. Just run away. Go on. All right, you ready? You good? Okay, so
Wait, this is for Ragnarok? I haven't played that one.
Oh, you should. It's good.
Man. All right.
IGN gave it a 10. It's a good time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a good kicker question. Thor's hammer seemed like a pretty solid, cool thing to align with Ragnarok. You know, Kratos has kind of a track record of stealing god weapons and then using them himself, and he never uses it. Why?
I mean, he holds on to it once.
Yeah, that's true. He's got you there.
But you don't get to use it. You don't get to like run around and hit stuff with it.
He's got the axe.
Was that the reasoning? Like,
Yeah, the axe was made to be the counter to it. I mean, you know, it's almost like the good and evil weapon. So he wields the weapon for just. Thor wields the weapon for, tearing down the giants and things like that. So we didn't think fitting that into Kratos would work very well. It's like I'll also be completely honest. I'll tell you what I told the team, and people will be upset about this and they can blame me. So here, if you see me on the street, we can get into it. But to me, it was too easy. It was expected. It's what people, they could understand it. They could think about it. It wasn't going to surprise. But the weapon that was going to surprise was the weapon that we gave him. The way the story is told on how he gets it, who he is. If you think about his weapons, like they've been bestowed upon him, his core weapons, like the blades, they're pulled out of, the river of lava and dropped into his hands. Like the axe is bestowed to him by his wife. So when that spear is made, it's for him. It has his blood in it. You know what I mean? They prick it, and it's his whole history. If you watch that scene specifically, the blood comes out as the Omega first, which is the old version of him. But the thing that really cements it is the symbol of Sparta, that he is that just general that's going to take care of business. So we put a lot of thought into that. And, I challenged the team too. I said, hey, we want to make the best stick ever, that all spears will be judged against. And I'll be honest, I think I'd put ours up against any I've seen in a video game.
The Draupnir spear was by far, once I got that, I had a hard time swapping off of it. It's so fast, it's fluid, there's so many different utilities that you can use it for in combat. It's just great. And that moment was so just amazing. Like I literally wept, like openly wept at that moment because it was just so powerful. Kratos opening up to somebody else other than Atreus or Faye, and was just very powerful. Like what was that like, kind of like giving Kratos that moment to open up to somebody else? How did that kind of come about?
I think it's just been a culmination of his journey from 2018 to now. He's been this guy who's had to push everything down. He doesn't really have anyone around him. And the fate kind of started to bring that out of him. And then Atreus really cracked the shell at the end of 2018. Kratos lets the bandages go, an amazing moment. And he talks to him and he tells him the story of his namesake, and why he wanted to name him that. And you start to see that Kratos thinks about these things. He's not just this one-dimensional character. And for me, he's always been that way. Even go back. I mean, before God of War 1, he's a husband.
Yep.
He's a father. He's a general. He leads people. His city-state respects him. So we wanted to have these pairings in this game where, Mimir and Brock became like his kind of like confidants, like his buddies, and then Sindri, and then the kids become Atreus's crew, and you get these different points of view. And when you start to look at them, you go, oh, okay, that makes sense that they gravitate towards each other. So Brock being pretty gruff, and and to have them almost both open up, that's what the moment is even more beautiful.
Yeah.
Brock is all upset, and Kratos is the one that calms him down. And you don't really see Kratos do that. You want to see usually people trying to do the opposite, or he has to temper himself. So I think it was just one of those moments in the writer's room where you're sitting there and you're thinking about it. You're like, okay, we got to make this weapon, and how are we going to do that? And that was one of the very few scenes that I did any writing on. I trust the writers, but there was the way that thing was crafted, all the elements, seeing the visuals, the blood, all those pieces I really wanted. So I wrote structurally. I didn't write a lot of the lines, but structurally how that scene was going to go. But it's a special one. I'm glad it landed for you.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, more on the spear. Like the way you talked about it, it sounded like it was always the plan to make it a spear. Is that the case? Were there other types of weapons ever considered?
Yeah, I mean, when we started early on into I would say the fall of 2018, and people were pitching everything. Obviously, Mjolnir was on the table, but I really wanted to go back and show who he really was, and if he was going to lead these people to this war, I wanted to see that guy. You know, the guy we never really get to see. And we saw a little bit of it in Ghost of Sparta, but not a lot of people played that because the Spartans bring him his weapons. They bring him the arms of Sparta with his spear and his shield, and you get to see that general a little bit. But we wanted to see that in the Norse, mythology, because it's just so separate too. It's nothing like what you would see. The axe is still part of that. It's cold. You know, we kind of have these little phrases for the weapons internally for how we bake all the ideas in. And, you know, the axe, I think, I might get this one wrong because this is the one I always use, but it was like this frozen lumberjack, you know, and then the blades have always been this like ballet of fire. And so for the spear, coming up with that, here I challenged him. I was like, hey, come up with the phrase that people can get behind this. And he had this idea. He was like, it's just like beat the door down, you know, and that's what he wanted out of that spear. It wasn't just this pokey thing that thrusted. It was this thing and just like literally it would smash your face in, you know, and he does that when you start hitting the R1 and he starts stabbing, but then he starts coming with the blunt side and it just everything crushes. And then when you detonate it and you see all those rocks explode, and it just had this violence to it, but it was through this kind of very forceful Kratos imposing his will as a general with a thinking mindset, because you can't just go berserk with that weapon. You have to think about what you're doing. It has precision, it has a tight area of hit, you know, there's so many things that are put into it from both the storytelling and the combat that we wanted to be folded in where you kind of can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what the team is very good at. They blur the lines on everything. So it just feels like it feels right.
Yeah, it felt really distinct. I remember the first time I grabbed it, I was like so used to playing with the blades, with the axe, and I grabbed the spear and I start swinging it around. I'm like, I don't know if I like this at first. I was like, it's a different style. It's a different rhythm too. But after a while, I was like, man, this thing kind of slaps. And then especially when you're just like chucking at it from a distance, I'm like, that was my favorite part. I was like, I mean, I'm never like, I don't care about Kratos like using a bow and arrow. Like that's not badass. But like chucking this javelin like 30 meters away and then exploding it, like, man, that was a great idea. And combining it as well with Draupnir, which is like an item from Norse mythology. Was that also always the plan, or? So
we started with the spear, and then I started to think about like, well, if we want to have infinite spears, we have to come up with some way to do this. We can't just like gamify it. We want it to be part of the lore. And we were talking about Draupnir, and we were like, oh, well, it does duplicate. And then it was just one of those peanut butter chocolate moments in my head where I was like, hey, what about this? And they're like, are you serious? You think we could pull that off? And I'll go back. We even had a crazier thing because it had the wind element early on where when you would detonate it, it would shatter into a bunch of rings and it would leave shrapnel on the ground. And then if you were able to like kind of use the wind, it would pick that up and you would get this kind of like shotgun pelting effect. But it just became too much where the player was just overwhelmed with too many things to worry about. So we ended up pulling that idea back. But even then there was like rings everywhere.
This isn't Sonic the Hedgehog. You can't do that.
So it led you right into it because then that became the joke. Like, okay, what is that going to sound like? And then everybody's like, do. It's like, all right. Like that's, we got to get back into our realm, and you know, we don't want him like having that noise. But yeah, it was. And then the moment with Sindri to go down and get it, then made sure both of the blacksmiths. We knew Brock was going to be the one to go, but we needed to make sure they were both part of crafting the thing. So then seeing him go down there and the little Scrooge McDuck money, get the ring.
That was a really cool moment. Right? I had no idea what the plan was. They're like, okay, we got something for this weapon. And he descends down this well and just lands, in the Scrooge McDuck pool of golden rings. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is
like they're loaded. Yeah.
That's true too.
They've got so much money. Set. Like, why are they still blacksmithing? They could retire.
Why are they asking me for my hack silver?
Parts and labor, man.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah,
dwarves. Now, clearly, like the team really has this kind of like almost like poetic approach, like frozen lumberjack, like ballet of fire. I guess I'm curious, what was the kind of core philosophy with Ragnarok compared to 2018? Like, was there like a sort of just a I don't know, motivational phrase, or like a really just it's like a very focused, vague question here.
I'll go with the super high level one. I've always had this kind of theory. It's, this is a math formula that doesn't work, but it makes sense metaphorically to what you're trying to do. and they got the team to kind of buy into this idea of all 8s make a 10. If everything in your game is at an 8 or above, then it will always rise. And if you have anything that's lower than that, it pulls down, and then people like yourselves can pick it apart. And
All right.
Yeah, this is fair. This is fair.
shots fired. But you can tear it down. So what we would say, is like, okay, cool. Like this is getting really, really good. Animator, you could take that to a 10, but over here, this animation, maybe we didn't get the cloth right or whatever. Maybe we could hop on that and pull that up from like a 6 to an 8. And then if you have everything, like again, sitting at that level, it's just like, man, everything is so good. This is really good. And it does its opposite effect. It pushes up. And it's just one of those ideas that if, glass half empty, glass half full. So if you have more things that are full, then people are more apt to be like, this is really positive and this is creative and amazing. So
There's a George Carlin line about never having slept with a 10, and there's more to it after that. It's a similar philosophy, but I like the approach there. I love
me some George Carlin. Yeah. So there might be something in there. I pulled it out.
Can we talk about Heimdall?
Sure.
He's a dick.
Oh, I hated him.
My favorite fight of the game, by far.
Scott Porter absolutely crushed that character.
Yeah.
He was so worried because we didn't want to let the character loose into the wild, and he kept saying, man, why can't we talk about him? I was like, because we want him to be a surprise. He's so good. Because we've seen the playtest feedback, and everything you guys are saying echoed across like 20 playtests. And I'd send him the little quips. And he's like, but do they like him? And I was like, no, but that's a good thing, So, but Scott was amazing. But that fight is a hard fight. Like, how do you make a fight where you can't hit a guy? And these are the kind of challenges we like to take on. And Adam Oliver, the main combat designer on that, he was new to the studio, never built a boss fight before. So it was a big challenge for him. And he struggled for a bit, but he stayed after it. And, I think it's one of those, you won't forget that fight.
No.
Okay, so you're probably all aware of the Callisto Protocol. It's a survival horror game coming to PlayStation, Xbox, and PC platforms on December 2nd. And if you want to delve into this terrifying universe a little bit early, you should check out Helix Station. It's a Callisto Protocol narrative companion podcast that stars Gwendolyn Christie and Michael Ironside. IGN is publishing and distributing Helix Station in partnership with Striking Distance Studios. In episode 3 of the show, our heroes Percy and Kane crossed paths with the daughter of the prisoner who they were tracking and stumbled upon a strange alien creature in suspended animation, frozen in a block of ice, which, as luck would have it, is starting to melt. What could possibly go wrong? Here's a clip from episode 4. Let's check it out.
Don't be stupid.
Prendergast, get off me!
There's nothing you can do for him. Percy! Percy. Don't look. Come on. We gotta go!
I can't leave him!
We gotta go, Percy! He's dead! Where's the girl? Percy!
In the vent!
Come on! Get inside! Eat shit! Move your ass!
Juniper, you down there?
Yeah, I'm here.
We gotta move, kid, come on!
There's a problem.
No shit, there's a problem!
Juniper, go!
Okay.
Vent is shaky as shit.
I tried telling you we can't keep going. The vent is all wobbly. We're too heavy.
We gotta take our chances! Move!
Whoa.
Hold on!
That was a sample of episode 4 of Helix Station, a Callisto Protocol companion podcast that's coming out leading up to the release of the game on December 2nd. The first 4 episodes are out now, and new ones are coming out every Thursday, and you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. And now, back to Beyond. I guess I'm curious, like, when you're borrowing from Norse mythology, there's a certain amount you can pull from, but is Heimdall like canonically that obnoxious, or was that like a creative decision?
That was a creative decision.
Okay.
And there's not a lot about any of these characters because it's been pushed through the ringer so many different times. People translate it, and then you have the Christian come in, and the paganism kind of gets lost in that. And so it's just we pick and choose what we want also for the game. Put the God of War paint on it. The one thing that I did take is I read this one time somewhere is he had gold teeth, and I was like, oh, that's even makes him more obnoxious, so we'll give him gold teeth, you know. And yeah, we just wanted him to be what do we say, we wanted him to have the most punchable face.
Yeah,
he definitely had a punchable face, and I enjoyed punching it.
Yeah, and so that build up to where you clip him,
yes,
clips him, and if you didn't notice, like he clips him with the right hand, and he cuts him just right, and he hits him with the ring, clips him with the ring on his hands, you know? So he still gets him with Draupnir even when he's in that moment. So just those little touches for us that are like special.
Yeah, I like there wasn't a character like that for me in 2018, and like I think you could have like characterized Heimdall in a way that's just like, I am, like, based on my Googling, like his whole thing is, I'm a very loyal servant of Odin, I'm dedicated, I'm just a good, like, dedicated guy. And he's I think he's closest to like the god of the humans, right? He kind of helped create their class system and whatnot. So why did you decide him to make him such a dick? Because like,
so it's awesome because you're dancing right on the line of why we did that. So we try to look at all these gods they have these abilities, but they're not always good. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a sense of their nature. The ability is not always a good thing. So like Baldur, we go back and look at that. We'll use that as like the starting point. He can't feel anything. Imagine what that would do to you as a person. If you can't feel anything at all, it's going to drive you crazy at some point. You're going to be a little messed up. So we were like, well, if you could always see what people's intentions are, what would that do to you? And he's just like, you can't be around people. He's like, everybody's gross. They always want something, or there's a reason behind it. So he's just kind of shut off. But that's not really, I mean, he's still just a dick at his core. But, you know, it's that part piled on top of it. And that's why when he's looking at the kid for the first time, he's like, he starts saying wild stuff like, I see cities burn because of you. You know, it's like, he's not making that up. It's like, he really sees this in him. And so we were like, okay, if you take that, then there's almost a reasoning behind it. It doesn't excuse it, but you could almost go, well, if I could, yeah, I wouldn't want to be around people either, because people are kind of suck sometimes, you know, not always, but they do. And so we wanted to give them these kind of like, dualities to their abilities that also kind of make them, you know, their personalities the way they are.
That's really interesting, like having the abilities kind of be the inspiration for the personality. That's really cool. And I want to ask, as well as the decision to have Kratos kill him, I think as a player, when you meet Heimdall and you keep hanging around him, you're like, I really want to kill this guy. And when that moment finally comes as a player, you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, that felt really good. But when you're following Kratos in this story, he's consistently like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to kill people.
Yeah.
And he's kind of driven to this point where he's like, okay, I like in a rage, like I have to kill him. Can you talk a little bit more about that decision?
Sure. The whole thing about them even meeting up, you know, because Kratos has tried to avoid it. Like, he even says, like, we're not doing that anymore. You know, the whole plan was like, let's go get Heimdall. And then he's like, nah, let's not do that. And then he still shows up. And that's almost like a dumb luck moment. Where, you know, you're like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm trying not to do this. And here he is. So, you know, and then Kratos tries to give him the out. And then Heimdall, being the prideful dude he is, you know, he was like, you know, once you start running your mouth about Kratos' kid, like,
it's a wrap.
It's not gonna end well. Yeah, it's not gonna end well. So, you know, that arm comes off, and then he comes back, and you know, it was very specific the way, like, I remember describing it to the animator. I was like, this has to be the most dirty, messy thing that it has to be in the game, because we want to see the old guy come out. You know, I mean, you have to make everybody almost be like, oh no, like, is the snap, or was this like a momentary thing? And that's why I wanted Mimir off the hip and staring at it and yelling at him the whole time, like, where it's just like Mimir's watching this happen, you know, and the whole choking him out, the arm fading, and him saying monster. You know, because it's like that's the thing that digs deep to Kratos, and you know, right there he has to hold that he did it. And there's a beautiful little touch when he rolls the body over to get the horn, and he goes to get it and he misses. And then he goes in with even more force and snatches it, because he's got so much adrenaline. And I remember we called cut on that take, and Chris was like, I'll do it again. I'll get the horn clean. I was like, absolutely not. Because Chris was mad that he missed it. So it was real, like, upset Chris grabbing that horn on the second one. So it was even better, you know what I mean? So he was like, all right, cool. You know what I mean? Like,
That's so
and we
sick.
watched the playback, and he was like, oh, yeah. Okay, cool. I see it. But it's those magic moments that happen. Because he was already in that mindset. But then when he knew, because he's also trying to hit everything to make sure the camera's where it is, and then we missed it. And he goes, you watch it again, you'll see it. He goes back in with some force.
That's some of my favorite stuff in this. Is just the sort of the human element is like front and center, despite everyone being some sort of deity. Are there any other like tidbits like that come to mind of like sort of just organic things that came out during performance capture?
There's always some. We always try to be a collaboration with the actors. Like, we wrote the words, but like, if you're feeling this or you're doing that, like certain things. And Chris is so good with Kratos. There's a moment after they come back after saving Freyr, and he gives him the boat, and Freyr kind of goes like this as he moves away, because the drugs are kicking in that they gave him for his wound, and he's like, make a vineyard god proud, and he pumps his fist like that. But the first few takes, he kept kind of like doing this to Chris, and Chris came to me and he was like, if he does that one more time, I'm going to grab him. He's like, because Kratos would break that guy's arm if he touched him like that. And so we went over to Brett, and we were like, hey, like, do something different, because he wouldn't touch Kratos like that. And he was like, all right, cool. But it was just like they figured that out together, how they were going to do that. And there's a couple other little moments like that, but it's just everybody's into it. There's no like star, if you will. It's like it's a team effort to get these scenes, because in one shot camera, if anybody misses, start over. So it's even the camera person has to be on, like, even somebody being like giving you the cue, like, we're getting really inside the how it's done now, but like, they don't carry the weapons on them. There's a stagehand walking behind them with the axe on their back, and then when they go to grab it, they let go. And if that gets dropped or whatever, and then you got to start over again. You know what I mean? It's all these little moments. It's just a ballet, and if you see it, you'd be like, "Whoa, this is wild!" How this, and then you get all that emotion at the same time when they're trying to hit all these little pieces and these micro bits. And another really one that I love personally is when the kids birth the Jormungandr, when they put the soul in it. And I was looking at it one day, and I was like, because in the mythology is that they're the parents of these giant monsters, and it's like we can't be doing it the way it was done in there. It's very awkward.
Yeah.
So we had to like find interesting ways around this. So I was looking at it, how we had it, and I was like, oh, okay. When you guys go to put your hands up there, put your hands like this, and it's like a little heart, and then the soul goes right through the middle of that, and it's like them coming together for that bonding moment to bring the Jormungandr into life. And it's just little things, and then they forgot a couple times, and you keep moving their hands, and then they get it just right. And then that ended up becoming the cover of the 7-inch that comes with the collector's edition. If you look at that, that's their hands like that, with Angerboda and Atreus running into the field.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I'm really curious, when did the team know that Ragnarok was happening? Was it like, did you end 2018 knowing that there was going to be something afterwards, or was this sort of, you left it hanging and picked up?
Well, I mean, they most definitely wanted us to make a sequel. The game did okay, right? So, but what it was going to be was still up in the air at that point. And then the first talk was like, okay, is it going to be 2 or 3 games? And then we kind of got to the point where we were like, I think we can do it in 2. And then Corey was very adamant, like, hey, I think 2 is the way to go. I think we can touch this up. And then at that moment, he gave me like 3 things that had to be done. And I said, okay. And now he's like, what are the 3 things? He's like, well, Ragnarok's going to happen. The kid's got to leave. And Brock's got to die. And I said, okay. And he goes, do you know why Brock needs to die? And I said, yeah, I remember we talked about this a long time ago, that he's the family dog. And so that's why. And he said, yep. And then that was it. Pretty much like, and then the rest of the time was like me just checking in with him, like, we're going to do this. How do you feel about it? And he's like, that's good to go.
So you bookended the entire game with the deaths of family dogs.
Pretty much.
It's not really a fan favorite approach, but sure, go off.
So, but
I mean, it works. It works.
It
Family
definitely
dog's
works.
dying. It works.
Metaphorically,
Yes.
but it's the I mean, Corey just, like, we have that trust with each other. So he was like, that's like the things that he had, and we just worked, and the writers back and forth, and that takes a while, to get all the little beats and how everything's going to come together. And but yeah, Ragnarok was the thing, but we didn't want it to be the focus. Like, even though the game's called that, I think that's where some people get a little, like, perhaps frustrated with pacing and whatnot. They're like, think it's just going to be Ragnarok from the start till the end, and it just comes in towards the end. And it's because it's like nobody wants it to happen. It's just, we're in this weird limbo period of Fimbulwinter, and as long as nobody blows the horn, we're good. And then there has to be a really good reason to blow the horn, and then we give a good reason to blow the horn, right? Because you can't lose the family dog.
There it is.
Yeah.
Was obviously, you're supposed to kill your darlings and all that. Was there ever a maybe more bloodthirsty point in the writer's room where other characters were going to get killed off, or was there ideas getting kicked around in there?
I mean, no, we weren't like going to do any kind of weird red wedding thing or anything like that. Like, we like it. We love our characters. Like, even the ones we killed, we felt like it had to be done with a sense of purpose and good reason. It couldn't just be done like flippantly. So I don't think so. We were pretty set with the cast. This game was wild because normally you do a lot of like trimming, and we only trimmed a little bit out of this game. Like, we had a really solid plan and just kind of stayed after it. And I thought the team was ready to do something in this scale, and I think they showed and proved that they could.
This actually brings up a really good question from our community. Jake Jackson asked, how did you relate to the characters and their transformations? Such an intimate story. Is there a piece of you in it?
I think there's a piece of all of us in it. Sure, there's little tidbits of stories I told to the writers and them telling me, and people on the team like having little anecdotes. I don't want to go into those right now and out people and what was theirs or whatever, but yeah, 100%. But a lot of it does just come from, listening to media, just things that kind of like build you up as a person. You kind of want to have other people go, I see you. Because no one person's going through one thing by themselves in the world. Like, everybody's gone through something that's similar, or there's a way into it. And that's what we're really, really trying to drive towards with the two POVs. That you have this father who's struggling with these things that he can't teach Atreus about being a giant. I mean, he didn't even know Faye was a giant until the end of 2018. He's got to hold that. That's what the game opens with, him like reflecting on that bag. Like, why did she not tell me? And he's got to raise this kid, and he's got to keep him away from all this crazy stuff that's about to go down. And then the kid's like, I want to know about that. And you can't fault him for that. It'd be like if someone was adopted and they wanted to find out who their birth parents are. You can't say, well, I raised, you know what I mean? Like, you got to let them figure that out. So we wanted to have those pieces be there where people could connect. And there was a lot of ways in for different, if you're just not into Kratos, there's still a way into that story for you. And you can find something to latch onto. And I think the one that a lot of people don't see coming is a Sindri transformation. Mm-hmm. He's so keyed in the last game, germaphobe. We play that card really well early, where you're like, yep, he's that guy. He's almost like a caretaker, because he shows up and he's it's almost like when you go to school and he's like, you forgot your lunchbox at the bus, and then your mom comes running out, because he's got that moment where he's like, and I got you these compasses, and then I got you a little lamp, and he's always taking care of you, and he's like, and don't tell Brock, and all this kind of stuff. And you just see that, and then when he gets clipped on the head and you see him all bandaged up, because when the kid turns into the bear, you even feel more sorry for him, and you're like, oh man, like, this poor Sindri. But then when you see him with the gloves off, and then the blood splattered all over, and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen here? And he's like, he was always kind of like, the thesis behind him is like the giving tree. He's always giving and giving and giving and giving and giving until he's a stump. In that moment when you see him at Brock's shop with Brock on the table, you're seeing the stump.
Yeah, what I noticed about that arc for Sindri is that, he still doesn't forgive Atreus, even to the very end of the game. Like, I don't know, was that even considered? Like, was there ever going to be like, maybe we should have them have a reckoning, or like just make up, but they never do.
I don't know, man. Some people have fallouts and don't talk to their brother for 20 years, or their best friend never again, over some silly dumb shit. So, we're like, you're not just going to bounce back, so we'll see what the future holds. But right now they're not on good terms.
God of Remorse coming 2027. Let's talk about the crater. There's like an entire area that's just kind of, buried in there. That
I'm curious
shows.
to see what you guys thought of it.
I love the crater. I got to the crater and I was like, I have so much, like, there's so much to do here. It gave me like Monster Hunter vibes, where there's just like there's dragons flying around everywhere. It changes based on day and night cycle. Like you can adjust the map based on doing certain quests. Like the crater was probably one of my favorite areas from all of Ragnarok, because there's just so much, and you can go back and enemies respawn. So you can kind of like test, like, how does this combo work? How does this armor set work against these different type of enemies? And it's just, I loved it. Like the crater was just like, what was the inspiration for that? What like was like, we need to do this big open.
There's a good
area.
story to that, but I want to hear what they thought of it.
So you're pointing at me.
Yeah.
I mainlined the game,
Yeah.
and
So you don't know what
I
it
haven't
is?
seen it. It just
Oh,
says
okay.
ask about the
Yeah,
crater.
I wrote this question. Yeah, when I first discovered it, I was like, I mean, I'm a completionist, so I was like, let me just do all the side quests.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, we're gonna go get this guy. Let's go find him. And then it drops you, like you climb that cliff, and you see this massive area, like the Savannah Plains, basically. And I'm just like, no, what? Like, there's no main quest here. Like, what am I supposed to do here? This massive area. And then the more I'm like running around, I'm like, oh, it's bigger. Oh, it's bigger. There's this other wing to it. And like, there's just more rivers and other things. And I was blown away, because this is an optional area. Like, you beat the game and you didn't have to go there at all, but it's huge, and there's still story content as well. That's what I was also like. So, yeah, great story content that, gives you more backstory on like what Faye was doing before she met Kratos, and the way that unfolds is really cool. And it's just, yeah, I want to know more about it. Yeah.
So the original inspiration for that was after we shipped 2018, every time we finish a game, I give my wife carte blanche, pick where we're going to go in the world, because she's had to suffer with me not being home working on the game and stuff like that. So she was like, I want to go to Africa. So we went to Tanzania and Kenya, and there's this place there called the Ngorongoro Crater. And it's this volcano that collapsed in on itself, and it's this giant valley, and all the animals, minus the birds, they're born and die inside here, because the walls are so high they never leave. Only the birds come in and out for the most part. And we spent a whole day there driving around, seeing all the animals. And I watched like a gazelle be killed by a cheetah in the morning. And by the night when we were leaving, there was nothing but a skull left. You literally watched like a thing be on the planet and not be on the planet. But it was this ecosystem, and you had predators and prey and all these things going on at once. And it was just incredible. And when you're looking at if you're going to make like an open world game or whatever, you're looking for something that's kind of isolated but also open. That's why it's always like an island, or some kind of peninsula, or floating barge. It's something that's like there's enough to play, but it's like not like where you can go off forever. So I was looking for something we could do that'd be like that, and it just clicked in my head when we were leaving. And I saw it again, like I saw the skyline and the clouds and all these things, and I was like, I came back to the team. I was like, hey, we want to toy around with making an open world space. Check this out. And they were like, let's do that. And the lead encounters guy, Andrew Chrysophides, and he's a level designer by trade. That was his pet project. He was the encounters lead, but he was building a crater as his pet project on the side.
Oh my gosh.
And with a bunch of other people. Obviously, it took a ton of people, but that was like his thing, and he drove. And all the people, the progression team, the quest, everything that went into that, because it's all layered, and you can play it in different orders, and there's so much. And you can do it with Atreus or Freya.
Yeah.
That's a wild thing if you go back and replay all the XBL spaces. XBL, sorry. That's our internal team exploration spaces. You can do that with Freya or Atreus, and the dialogue's different.
Yep.
And so it gives you that kind of, again, the POV is really interesting when you play these spaces. So, but that was, something we wanted to take on. It's like almost like an R&D project, but that was so good that we shipped it.
I mean, if it turned out terribly, it would be pretty easy to sort of excise it. But
yeah,
it's
and
just sort of
some of the, I guess, learnings of how to do this stuff, where it's like it may not work out, and if it does, then it's okay. We can scope it down. But it just kept going, and the art team was really figuring out like what would work, and then the day night thing clicked, and it just became this like, okay, we're gonna go there, and we're just gonna go dragon hunts and all kinds of wild stuff inside there. So if you haven't seen it, you're a bummer. You miss out on. There's tons.
I'm gonna go back and play it. I mean, definitely sold it now. I'm fascinated because like that it shows like kind of a huge leap of faith, knowing that like you can have this massive chunk of the game and some players might just miss it. You know, some players might just skip it entirely.
Yeah, actually, that's a great lead in for me because kind of goes to our philosophy. Like the more you put into a game, the more it'll give back to you. And we really, really believe in that. Every game that has blown me away since, you know, little 8-year-old me was playing games was that game. If you put more into it, you got more out of it. And it shouldn't be demanded that you do that though. If you just want to mainline it, there's an amazing story, you know, a very fitting end to it. If you want to explore out, you're going to learn more. You're going to get to play more. You're going to experiment. Everything's going to open up. Your armor systems are going to open up. Your, you know, weapon components are going to open up. All these things, and that's people that are going to do that. That's what they want anyhow. It's, you know, if you want instant gratification, our game is probably not for you. Like we make you earn a lot of things in the game. We want you to work for them. Not difficult, just work for them so you can see everything it takes to get somewhere. You know, I think there's a lot of instant gratification in the world right now, and it makes things hollow. And we, you know, even like the petting of the wolves.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You have to earn it. Like Kratos is not just going to go pet those wolves.
I helped out a lot with our writing our wiki and our guides and stuff. And at one point it's like things that, you know, we have a things God of War Ragnarok doesn't tell you. And I was like, you can't pet the dog. And then I finished the game and got all the way in. And I was like, hey, remove this. You can pet the dog, but you have to earn it. Yes. And I was like, this is such a amazing little detail that I loved. And I was just like, this made it all, I felt so much better about being able to pet the best boy in the world in all the realms. Yeah. Like it was just.
Yeah. Like both sets, like if you go do all the raider camps, then you can pet Specky and Svanna and calm them down. And then when you finish the game, if you go to Jotunheim to see Angerboda, then Fenn's there and you get to pick him or pet him, and it's just amazing. So, and that's another thing too. In the post game, I don't think anybody's found everything yet.
I was going to ask about that.
There's just a lot of hidden things in the post game.
I mean, we see this stuff happen where, like, you know, a year and a half after a game comes out, somebody's like, "Hey, I found a boss that no one knew about," or whatever. Is there anything buried that deep? Do you think?
I'll be honest, I can't quite answer that 100% because I haven't looked and seen what everybody's found up to this point. But there are things in there. A lot of them are just for us, like fun stuff that we just like, and we wanted it to feel like the world's still there. You can't end and him say, you know, there's much to do, and then it's just like the game's over and then that world stops. So we wanted to have this like living, breathing post game where you get to see little wrap-ups with characters and you get little hints of where they could go in the future. And, you know, even though it's the end of the Norse saga, we leave it open for maybe there are other things with other mythologies and whatnot. So we'll see where the future of Santa Monica goes.
Now,
I mean, if you pay attention to Tyr, I mean, there's a reason why he does the 6 animations that he does at the end of the game.
I'm sorry, say that again?
So Tyr, once you free real Tyr,
yes, yeah,
he is in all the realms.
Yeah,
yes,
so we were tracking him.
Yeah,
is he in Jotunheim? Does he pop up in Jotunheim?
I don't think he's in Jotunheim.
Okay,
he's in Midgard, Alfheim. Goes to the Spark of the World.
Yeah.
He's at Svartalheim. Vanaheim at the Grotto camp.
Right.
Yeah. So there's like 6 different places he is.
Okay, so he's in
he does very specific animations.
Yes. So
we may have seen that he's been traveling the world.
Yeah. So we noticed that as well. I mean, can I ask about that? Like, sure. Just the fact that
I'm gonna get in trouble here in a minute, Joel.
The fact that he even comes back at all was a really big surprise for a lot of people who played the game, because that's another like post-game thing that, like, if you don't go back to Niflheim and find that prison and then go to the bottom, I mean, hopefully I'm not spoiling it.
It's a spoiler cast.
It is a spoiler cast.
We're spoiling.
Yeah, what brought about the decision to even bring him back? Because like once the twist happened, yeah.
Straight up, I mean, like, he's an awesome character. I mean, even it's funny if you go back to look at the trailer from 2021. You know, he's in there, and everybody's like, "Oh man, this is amazing!" And then we put him in the end of the 2022 trailer where they're clasping hands, and everybody's like, "This is amazing!" You know, 2 gods, 2 wars.
Yeah,
you know, kind of vibes. But it's like, you know, the trick now.
Yeah,
and it just like I wanted it into the marketing where people were just like, dude, all along they just totally piled it on. But we were like, no, it's real Tyr is. He's still a thing, and we want to know about him. We didn't want to just like throw him under the bus. So if you look in that prison in the cells, there's a lot of other dead bodies, and and there's a couple characters that are alive in there that you fight, enemies and whatnot. But that's like Odin's whole thing. He was putting his thumb on the scale everywhere by impersonating other people.
Yep.
There's a super hidden one that only I know about, but I'll tell you today. When you're boating into Svartalheim for the first time, right before the siren goes off, there's a little dwarf on a bridge and he spits over the bridge.
I saw that.
That's Odin.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. That's fantastic.
And is that dwarf character model in the prison as well? Or?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so
See,
funny.
I didn't connect those two. That's
Man.
It's you can't. It's like not 100% because of the clothes are slightly different.
Yeah, but
Right.
It's like just little stuff like that to us is everything. The one that a lot of people, I saw someone finally figured it out the other night was the subtitles. Like when Odin as Tyr speaks, there's no accent on the Y in the subtitles
Wow.
for the entire game. And then when you find real Tyr at the end, the accent's there.
Man.
Well, we should have just seen that coming a mile away.
Yeah.
Dead giveaway.
That is kind of true.
That's how deep the team. I mean, when we decide we're going to do something like that, like because doing a murder mystery like that kind of thing is like, it could get really tropey. And did you see it coming?
no,
Right.
not at all.
Did you feel cheated?
No.
No.
Right, and so
Yeah.
that's like Sixth Sense. That's really hard to do. Thread that needle.
Right.
So when we said we were going to do that, because I remember we were in a meeting one day and we were talking about the Tyr prison and all that, and I said to the writers, I was like, what if Tyr's Odin? And they were like, what? I was like, what if he's just in disguise the whole time, and like that's how he gets all the information and he knows what's going on, and that's how we do the flip flops of the prophecies. And they were just like, okay, stop talking. Like, we have to go. And they went away for like, I don't know, good like 5-6 days and like put it through its paces. And they came back and they were like, I think we can pull it off.
Man.
And there's so many little clues. Like, if the prison where you break him out, if you go back in there in that room, there's like raven feathers in the corner.
Oh my gosh.
That you can see it in the broom closet. Like, it's just, even just the stuff he says, like, he calls Freya Frigg, just like to dig the knife into her, like when you go back, it's
Right.
you can see it
All the
all, and
clues
you're
are
like,
there.
oh, come on, like, how didn't I see it? Because but
Right.
when you don't know, it's tricky. So
Can I was really fascinated with Odin, like your guys' take on Odin as a character in this game.
Sure.
Overall. You hit his appearance in the trailers, even the fact that it was played by Richard Schiff. And when he first comes walking in, I was really drawn to him just because he was so casual.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something we typically see in any like portrayals of the All-Father, right? It's like this guy who's very like Anthony Hopkins, right? Like that's what you kind of imagine as Odin. Like, can you tell us what inspired that decision to make him kind of,
sure.
West Wing Richard Schiff?
Well, there was a couple things. I mean, we didn't know we were getting Richard out at the gate, so the character was very developed. And then it was like, once we got him, we were like, oh, okay. And we made a couple adjustments and it just fit like a glove. But one of the big inspirations for me personally for this game, there was this exercise they had us do early on, like what the PR and marketing, and they do this canvas thing. And they asked me like, what are your like 3 biggest movies that inspired you for this game? And I said, oh, okay, cool. So the first one was A Bronx Tale. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie with Robert De Niro and Chaz Palminteri. It's like this amazing thing. He used to do like a stage play in New York before it was a movie and all this. And it's about this, Robert De Niro plays a bus driver and Chaz plays this gangster on the street corner. And Robert De Niro has this son that's caught in the middle between them. He sees his dad busting his hump all the time, and he goes and does all this stuff for the gangster and gets a ton of money. He's got more money than his dad and all this, and then he gets pulled. And as you see the kid grow up, he starts to really be this split. And I wanted that idea that Kratos is the hardworking father. He always goes and does the right thing. He's going to do it all this. And then Odin was this guy who's just like, whatever you want, I got you. Like, I got all the glitz, I got a Cadillac. Yeah. So that was like kind of the vibe that I wanted. And I talked to him about also splitting him like almost like a New York chess hustler, where you'd sit down with this unassuming old man and then like all of a sudden you just emptied your pockets playing chess and you don't know what happened, so those things kind of came together. And then when we got Schiff to come on board, it was like instantly it clicked for what we wanted to do. Now, not everyone likes that take, that's the when you go out on a limb like that. But not everybody liked Baldur either. They thought he was too, odd for what they thought he was going to be. But again, it goes to those personalities. Like that was part of it. Like Baldur being a little unhinged just because he couldn't feel anything.
Yeah.
So with the true kind of like, I guess I say that loosely true because we only know so much about these characters. He was this wandering guy, Odin. He wandered everywhere and he would do anything for knowledge, like scoop out his eye, like stab a spear in his side, hang himself from a tree, whatever it took. So he's not going to be the grand warrior. He get other people to do what he needed to do, and he can push, with words. And so that's what we really wanted. And that's why when he first comes in, we just wanted that instant, like, you know who I am. No introduction required.
Yeah.
And just taking everything in that scene. Everybody's respectful, but he's just like pulls a stool, drinks all everything, just whatever. He just runs stuff. And that's the vibe that we want to have. And then when we have that first little, what we call the nickel tour, when the kid shows up and he takes them all around the realms and he's just like, clicking through and just doing everything. And you're just like, this is wild. Like this guy can be anywhere he wants, whenever he wants. And then that's also some of the reason why you're like, well, how could he be? Oh, that's how he can be two places at once, because he can just bounce in and out as he sees fit. So it's like all of it come together, and it's all for that storytelling that we want to do. We try to leave no stone unturned when it comes to the story.
And so cool.
Now, in regards
did you notice
to
the ravens are
on his arm, the tattoos on his arm. Yeah.
If you watch through the scenes, you'll know which one's out and which one isn't, because they actually match 100%. Like when both birds are out, he doesn't have them. If one, he's got, it's
oh my God,
just the little details like that.
I was like noticing.
Did you like his hat?
Oh yeah,
that was my favorite thing. The team hated that. I was like, no, it'll make him even more unassuming. They're like, we hate this dumb hat. I was like, I love it.
He looked like Jason Biggs in Loser. No, I was looking at like just the texture of the tattoos as just like a slight scar tissue to it, which is just like, I don't know. It's different from just like having some lines drawn on something.
Yeah,
very impressive.
Comes down to Raph, our art director, man. He's sleeved up on both sides. Like, so like, if you're gonna have anybody do the tattoos, right, he knows what's up, and every single character he painstakingly went through, and if there's anything that needs to be said on them or the symbols, like everything is not done to just be aesthetically pleasing. It's done for. I think
Ralph Grassetti has the best fan art on Twitter, like period. Like it's obscene.
Amazing. Like, oh man, I don't know if you there's a little Instagram called Specky and Spana. My wife's running it because she's putting pictures of our dogs, because that was an inspiration for the names. But Raph made a sculpt of Atreus like hugging the two wolves and on a piece of birchwood, and had the team sign it. And I took it home, and my wife took it out of the box, and it was just like waterworks. She was just bawling. It's like, it's what he does. He just, with his art, just makes you just emotionally crack.
I got a kitten during the pandemic, and God of War 2018 was just so important to me. Like, I named him Atreus. So like my kitten is Atreus. So like he runs around, he gets into stuff. I just yell boy and he responds, and it's great. After Ragnarok, I'm trying to convince my partner to get a puppy so I can name him Finn, so I can have them together. That's awesome. Because like that is what I want.
You get another cat and get Loki and Atreus.
That's true. The only reason why I haven't thought about doing that is because I have a friend who, our previous host, Jonathan Dornbush, his dog is named Loki. So I was okay. So I was like, I can't do Loki because there's too close of a friendship, or like he's too close to me to like have the same pet name. But
there were a lot of animals in this, which I was really fond of, and I feel like it's kind of it's not, it was never like cutesy, but it definitely borders on like. It's more in a direction of sort of fantasy and folklore that I feel like is kind of at odds with the sort of, aggro, like epic stuff.
Yeah, it was one of the things that we wanted to change up, because we wanted the last game to be very grounded. And then when we had some of those high fantasy moments, but the cast was so tight, you couldn't have too many of them. As the cast expanded, we were like, oh, we should do this as well, so we can see more of the world. In Vanaheim, if you look carefully, you can see the little baby Charlies. The little turtles with a tree in their
Yes,
back.
I saw those. Yeah. I didn't know those were meant to be like baby Charlies. That's really cool, though.
Baby Charlies.
I love that. I think in Muspelheim there's like the little fire, like armed squirrels. Where there were squirrels. Yep. I love the little mushroom people that we had in Vanaheim.
Yeah, those were drakes.
Yeah,
it was just one of those things. Again, like the art direction for the game that Raph came up with. Like it's the central goal is called mythical realism. Like that's what we're shooting for all the time, and that's comprised of Norse mythology influences, classical fantasy, and then historical detail. They use those three as the pillars, and then so we wanted to push the classical fantasy a lot more now. Like the Norns are like our ode to the Dark Crystal, like they're very inspired by that type of stuff, and Like, who doesn't like animals? It's funny though, because I've seen some people being like, if I save one more animal in this game, and I'm like, what's wrong with you as a human being? I don't understand this. So.
Did you mocap a yak?
If we could have, we would have, but we did not.
Speaking of, go ahead.
Yala's awesome though. She's one of my favorite characters. I know some people don't. Jotunheim is a very divisive level. Either you're in or you're not, and we knew that, but it was very important to us for Atreus. Like that tells that tale. Like we wanted it to be that, when you first, you're like, when's curfew? Oh, 10 p.m. It's 10:17. I'm already in trouble. So 2 a.m. it is. You know what I mean? Just like milk it for all it's worth. And we really wanted you to have that feeling. And so, but Yala was part of that as well. Sorry, you're gonna ask a question.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring up that level, and because it's the first time you do take control of Atreus. And I think the first time I took control, I was like, okay, I'm going to be doing combat probably. I wonder what this combat's going to feel like. And it was more engaging than I expected, because I thought I would just be shooting arrows the whole time. And I was like, I don't really want to be shooting arrows the whole time. And so can you talk a little bit about how you designed Atreus' combat? Because, I think it was really surprising for a lot of players.
Yeah. Hayato, our companion lead, essentially he was responsible for Atreus' last game, as the companion. So the logical step was okay, Hayato, can you make him playable? And he goes, oh boy, here we go. So, and they kept asking, they're like, give him a sword, give him a club, I was like, dude, just have him hit him with the bow. I just want him to have the bow. They're like, nobody wants to hit anything with a bow. I was like, we'll put magic on it, it'll be great. Some people still don't like it, I get it, but I want to give him room to grow. And if you give him all this stuff out of the gate, and then again, it's like, well, where do you go from there? It doesn't leave anybody a good license to do stuff. So you want to kind of stay constrained, just like we stayed constrained with Kratos last time. It acts for 50% of the game, right?
Yep.
So it was the same idea. We said, okay, just apply the same lessons we learned with Kratos to Atreus this time for the escalation of him. But he's going to have a lot of people around him. So the idea was, even though you're playing as him, you should always feel like the companion. That's why, he doesn't tell a lot of people he's not going to tell Thor what to do. It's like, right. Thor's not going to be on square button. Hey, Thor, break things. Shut up. He just smacks you across the level.
Right.
So that's what we wanted it to be. So when he's with people his own age, they should feel like their team. When he's with people that are older than them, it's kind of when he's with Thor, you feel like you're the companion. Even
you feel like you're
Robin to Batman.
Yeah, exactly. Because Thor's just mashing on people, right? So that whole idea there we wanted to have is them, come together, these two kids that haven't really seen kids before, to get to hang out and be kids together. So him and Angerboda having that moment, I shouldn't say moment, but that level itself was very important to me, because I think what gets lost on people nowadays, that you can't take the time to just go and be with someone and just do silly things that don't matter, or your brain's so far away from that as an adult that you can't remember what that was like. It's funny because a lot of people are like, well, they wouldn't do that, or that. Why is this character doing it? Dude, you remember what it's like to be 14? Because you do some dumb stuff when you're 14 for some dumb reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I spent a lot of time just perfecting the rock skipping part.
Did you?
I spent a lot of time until I hit the clam and the second or third rock skipping.
Did you find the optional one at the end?
It's not the one right before is it the one where you're about to go on Yala and then or you're about to grab the rock and then the encounter happens?
No, back at the treehouse, there's another set of rocks. You can just go skip them to your heart's content.
Oh yes. Okay, I thought there was another one with that
I need to go back.
I mean, I do need to go back, but
it's cool. Yeah, he gets Ingrid at some point too, so you do get to have a little bit of square action.
Again, even that we tried to subvert expectations. We're oh, he's getting a sword, but it's no, it's a sentient sword that fights on her own, and you're and then you fall in love with that character. It's our kind of ode to things I grew up on. It's it's R2D2, the magic carpet from Aladdin, all these things all in one, Doctor Strange's cape, these are influences on us. And the sword was already known to be sentient. So we're why would we have him hold it? That's a waste of a character, So that's why we went down that road. But going back to the rock skipping moment, that was the one that for a long time people were dude, you gotta get rid of this. This is it's a lot of work. I was no, it's amazing. This is I did this as a kid. Sorry, we're putting this in. And then one of the guys working on it did the whole thing where if you got it perfect, you would hit the clam and get the little bonus. And I was there, perfect. So.
Can we talk a little bit about your personal history with God of War? Because you've been here since the ground floor.
Yeah, I started in 2004 on God of War 1. The first thing they gave me to do was the Cerberus puppy. That was my first character that I worked on. And I got it to scale and grow into the big Cerberus and then vomit up little baby ones and that whole thing. And people hate that enemy for that reason. But then I got started working on Kratos. And by the end of that project, I was running Kratos with Corey as the animator. And then Corey was tapped to be the director on God of War 2. And so we saddled up with him and I built Kratos on that game. And we laid down the foundation for God of War 3 early on, all the kind of behind the scenes. And then Stig took over and that game is absolutely incredible. He crushed that. And I became a consultant at that time. So I was working with a lot of different studios. But Ready at Dawn, I just spun up Chains of Olympus. Or actually, they were finishing it. They were about maybe 8 months out. And Santa Monica asked me to go down there and look at that. And I met Rue and Dana and that crew, Tony Vitale and all those amazing people down at Ready at Dawn. And we worked on that game together. It was super fun. And then when they said they were going to do a sequel, and Corey wrote Ghost of Sparta, and I went down and worked on that with them. And then they called me back for Ascension to work on some monsters. And then 2018 was kind of the special moment. I remember we were at GDC, and Shannon Studstill, she was the studio head at the time, she called and said, "Hey, you got to come out to dinner tonight." And I said, "Oh, I'm busy. I got things to do." She's like, No, you owe me. You got to come out to dinner." And I said, "All right, I'll meet you." And I can't remember where we went, but I walk everywhere here in San Francisco. So I was walking there, and then she was waiting out front. And I saw her, and I was like, "What's going on?" And then I turned around and this cab was there and Barlock got out. And I was like, "Oh, I know what's going on. They're going to try to get the band back together to make a new God of War." And sure enough, that's what that conversation was that night. And everything kind of was a launching pad from there. And then, at the end of 2018, towards the end, Corey was like, "I'm tired. I don't want to do another one. I need a break. I need to see my family." He goes, "Will you do it?" And it took him about 6 months to convince me, because I've always been kind of behind the scenes person and not really into the limelight. This stuff like this is difficult for me to do, but it worked out.
Nice.
Game is good.
Can we grill you now that we got you in the limelight and we're just making you horribly uncomfortable?
Yeah,
Can we grill you for your favorite moments from each of the God of War games?
Oh wow, you're really gonna test my memory, huh? Okay, God of War 1. Just because it's near and dear to me and it almost got cut from the game, and it is one of the softer moments for Kratos, is the hug during the Ares boss fight when you're in the dream sequence and you get the hug the mother and daughter to give your life back to them while you fight off your evil demons. Let's see, God of War 2. I'm just going to do all my selfish ones. The entire Colossus of Rhodes. That was a gnarly boss battle to build. I was probably one of the things I'm most proud of that I got to work on. Mark Alleen and Nate Stevens were the level environment artists on that. And just so many amazing people to put that thing together. That was also the inspiration for the Garm fight in this game. We call that bosses the level.
Yeah.
Like those are really hard to do where the entire level is a boss fight. God of War 3. Let's see. Man, there's so many good ones in that game. I think it's the thing they had in the trailer, because we never got it to work right in God of War 2. We call it the dog pile moment, where all the skellies jump on top of you, and then Kratos does the huge moment where they all just burst out when he goes into rage. That's just it's like a comic book cover shot. You know? It's absolutely incredible. Let's see. Ascension. That one's a wild game because it's like as you do the multiplayer stuff, you do the main game. But I think the Pollux fight is really cool. Like it's got all the time stuff going on, and that's a great moment in that game. Chains of Olympus. I think I'm trying to think this. Oh, this is just again a silly one, but there's a box push in the Morpheus Dream Cloud that like always trips people up that I just like watching people like stagger around in. I don't know why that's like, it's terrible because it's watching people suffer, but I really like that one for some reason.
Wait, a box push?
There's like, you got to push this thing and it's on fire and it moves the dream out of the way and people just get confused and it seems so straightforward. It's one of those things as a designer where you're like, just do what we want you to do. But people won't do it, and then you're always like scratching your head. It always sticks with me for that reason, because I go back to it to remember like, why aren't people, it's one of those. So again, these are for really weird reasons. I'm not answering this in a good way.
No, that's
great.
So funny, yeah.
Ghost of Sparta is the carrying Demos's body up the cliff to the barrel, because I'll be honest, like that was one thing I pitched a long time ago for a different sequence, but I was like really wanted to get that in, and Corey wrote it in, and Dana, and then really embraced that idea. And I just think it's just really powerful that that could have been a cutscene and you get to do it. And it's a really cool moment. 2018 is a very simple moment that a lot of people may not remember, but there's a bit where the kid lights this lantern and it flies up into the sky. It's such a just very poignant piece of storytelling that to me embodies that entire game. You know, it's like the kid has all this wonder and innocence about him, and Kratos is watching this unfold and really doesn't know how to connect with him. You have to like appreciate that and do it with him.
Yeah.
You know, this Kratos might light the lantern with him, but he didn't, you know. And then Ragnarok, whole game.
There you go.
It's still too fresh. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Pick, you know,
Good
whole
answer.
game is awesome.
Yeah. Akeem Outr, one of our castmates, couldn't actually be here today, but he did prepare a little bit of a video, and we want you to show that. He actually has a question for you. But Akeem, take it away.
Now, I know what y'all are thinking. I look like a hipster Kratos that's going into the woods to cut down a bunch of trees. I'm going to roast myself before y'all get a chance to do so. Anyways, I've been playing God of War Ragnarok. I got some thoughts I want to share about God of War Ragnarok with the rest of the crew and you all watching and listening at home. I've been playing God of War Ragnarok for about 11 hours now, playing side-by-side Thor as Atreus, watching the jiggle physics in Thor's belly, and I came to the realization that just being lost in his belly, that God of War Ragnarok's take on Norse mythology is way better than most. Now, I mean, let's take a look at what Marvel has done with characters like Thor, giving him long, flowing blonde hair, a physique that could rival that of America's favorite gem rat, The Rock, and supermodel good looks. Now, that ain't the Thor from the mythical history books of Norway that I've been reading, and I read a lot of them. Now, while I've never been a huge fan or a big fan or even a small fan of mythological figures in the MCU, I do have to applaud their inclusion in the overall Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'll bend the knee to that, because in some instances, the MCU has managed to acknowledge a few elements from the mythological source material. Like Loki, for example, was an amazing Disney Plus series where we were introduced to different variants of Loki. Now, in Norse mythology, Loki's shape-shifting abilities render him quite malleable, meaning he can take on various different forms. But God of War Ragnarok was and is far superior in its overall just presentation of everything, as we see Loki shape-shifting into different animals. And it's freaking awesome. It's awesome. Now, another cool thing about Loki in the video game, now there's a mission where you're Atreus, aka Loki, and you have to run around finding fragments and pieces of this wooden mask that's awfully similar to the one that Stanley Ipkiss wore in the Mask movie and comics. And in that particular franchise, The Mask, Loki was the creator of the zany mask that imbued Jim Carrey's character with all those crazy powers. Now, whether or not the writers at Santa Monica are just big Dark Horse Comics fans and fans of the Mask movie and wanted to, kind of throw that into their take on Loki's story in Ragnarok is honestly a question I'd have to ask them. I'm curious to ask them that question. But either way, you know what? It's nice to see them throw that into the mix and make it meaningful to the lore being told in the video game. Now, God of War Ragnarok and its take on Norse mythology is honestly unparalleled, unmatched, and the storytelling has been on point so far. Now, Thor and Loki in the MCU just can't touch God of War Ragnarok's take on those two characters. Not by a long shot. And if you, that's right, you watching and listening, don't agree with me, then I'll throw down my Leviathan axe and have you challenge my stance. Unfortunately, unlike Kratos, my Leviathan axe will never come back to me. No matter how much I put my hand out to try to grab it, it's just not gonna come back to me. But there is one thing that I can throw it back to you all in the studio. Beyond. Beyond. Boy. Beyond. Boy. Beyond. All right, I'll stop.
Well done, Akeem.
So The Mask, is it inspired by Jim Carrey's The Mask?
I'm sure if I said yes, we'd get in legal trouble. But I don't think it was 100%. I think I told him I wanted it to be wood because we wanted to carve things into it. It was more about what the carvings were. Like there's carvings from different languages on the mask when you look at it up close. But if there's some kind of thing, maybe somebody snuck something in I didn't even know about. But I don't think
it's the monomyth, you know. It's the Joseph Campbell stuff. Everything is drawn from some Jim Carrey movie.
Yeah, is that how it goes now?
Probably.
That's
It's
been
retconned.
version. Yeah.
Somebody stop you. You feature from the mask.
They both have the same initials. It's just like you replace Joseph Campbell with Jim Carrey now.
Pretty much, yeah. No, if you look closely, it says "smoking" on the top of the mask.
Smoking Hero's Journey.
Eric, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a huge blast. God of War Ragnarok is obviously worth the wait. It's an epic game. You've been hard at work, and huge congrats to you and the whole team for making it. And thanks for coming by and hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Of course. For those of you watching at home, you can find us all on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Josh is Josh. Jada is Jada Arena. Eric, are you on Twitter, Instagram, anything you want to plug?
Nope.
Go buy God of War Ragnarok. It's in stores now, available on all your digital storefronts for your PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 console. There, that's something you can plug.
Yeah.
Anyway, while we're plugging things, you can check out IGN Rewards. It is a free thing. Go sign up on IGN. You get discounts and stuff like that. There's also IGN Plus, which gives you the ad-free version and all sorts of other bells and whistles. And on that, beyond.
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 Beyond.